Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the very last edition of our book review session for the year 2023. And we are doing the second part of the book, Die Empty. And I think the book is very apt. Today we have our regular discussant, and she has decided to end the year solo. I will introduce her just for the benefit of some of us who may be first timers on this particular call or who may be listening to our book review session for the first time. Our facilitator for today, as always, is Ezine Obiora. And Ezine is currently, she's currently the Chief Human Resource and Operations Officer with Fimovation, and she has occupied this position for more than a year. Prior to now, she worked with HR International Energy Business Partner with Sasol, covering both Nigeria and Qatar, and she spent 8 beautiful years with Delta Afrique Engineering, where she held various roles. Some include human resource specialist, human resource specialist recruiting, human resource specialist focusing on learning and talent development and Nigerian content, senior HR representative, and so on and so forth. She has a degree in urban and regional planning from the prestigious University of Lagos. And I must confess that I've had the privilege and pleasure of knowing Ezine for more than 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. So in case you wonder how we get along, is because we have known each other. And one other thing among many that I think I have in common with Ezine is that she is a Toastmasters. I'm also Toastmaster. So in case you think it's natural, yes, it's natural, but it's a combination of both nature and nurture. Ladies and gentlemen, I guess I've spoken too much for tonight, but I'd like to hand over control, the virtual lecture, to my colleague, my sister, Ezine. But let me say again, compliments of the season, everyone, and compliments of the season, Ezine. Over to you, my sister.
Thank you very much, Yemi, and good evening, everyone. It just started, out there in our lingua, like play, at the beginning of the year. I just there to join a book club, and here I am. I've done 10 plus reviews, and it's been a good journey so far. They say when you read, your eyes get opened up, you get exposed to new knowledge, to the world. Don't ever think that you know it all. Because when you read, it just opens up your mind. It's almost like you're traveling. When you travel, they say you get exposure. When you're reading, it's a virtual travel. Your mind gets, to different places that you probably might not have been able to get to if you hadn't opened up your mind to read. So it's been an interesting journey through the year. And I'm grateful to God. Thank God that we have been successful. I was telling Yemi earlier on that thank God we've been able to successfully finish the year of book reviews. It's been refreshing, and at some point I'm also going to go around the table to ask us what our experiences have been so far with the book review and even with this book. So not to waste too much of our time, we're doing part 2 of the review of this book, this fantastic book, Die Empty, Unleash Your Best Work Every Day. Now, this book, it just kept me shouting, at different points. I'll be like, hey, when I'm reading the book, I'm like, hey. And people looking at me like, what's going on with this person? But because there were certain parts of the book that just resonated with me. But before I go in, so today we're going to review the final chapters from 7 to 12. In the first one, we did 1 to 6. So this time we're doing the remaining. And I remember at the beginning, in the first review, we had talked about how to read this book. So, the book is divided into 3 sections. For those of us that have read it, I hope that is the way we read it. And the truth of the matter is that this is not a book to read and just put aside. This is a book that you have to read over and over again, I assure you, because even when I finish the book, I'm like, nah, this is not the end. I'm going to go back to this because there are things that you have to go back, regurgitate, read and reinforce, revalidate. and then apply, because there's certain things you have to apply. So it's not a book to just read and keep aside. It's something to go back to. So like I said, the book is divided into 3 sections. The first 3 chapters discuss the nature of contribution, why work matters, and why so many brilliant people end up settling for less than they're capable of. Now, the following chapters, which are the ones we're taking now, chapters 4 through to 10, those ones now touch on specific principles that will help us cultivate the mindset and methods to unleash our best work. Then the last 2 chapters, 11 and 12, now offer strategies, like practical strategies on how to apply these principles in our daily lives and use them to uncover clarity and a deeper meaning to our lives. So that's a guide on how to have this book read. And if you did it that way, it will have more effectiveness for you. So now, moving on starting off with chapter 7, like I said, before I go ahead, so how it's going to work is I'm going to review chapter 7 to 9, but I'm going to come back at the end of the review of 9 briefly, just to ask us what's the one thing we have taken from the book. That's those of us that have completed the book. Even if you haven't completed the book, even if you've read a chapter, there must be some learnings, because every chapter of this book has enormous learnings, has gems here and there. So I will go around the table. So please prepare. Even if just a line, just tell us what you have taken from this book. So the chapter 7 talks about knowing thyself, right? And I don't know, there's a confusion whether it was Socrates. I think it was Socrates, not Aristotle, that said to know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. To be honest, if you know yourself, it solves a lot of problems in life. And the author says, look, knowing yourself addresses self-delusion and helps you to focus on living your purpose. Because if you know yourself, you know that you will not take the wrong path, you will take the right path, and it will help you, live a focused and purposeful life. Now, we know that recognition is the highest form of currency, recognition for work. And, that's why some people tend to focus on activities that will bring them feedback. Some people don't like to be behind the scene. They don't like to do things that they will not get a thank you or recognition for, right? So anything that's going to give them that immediate like, that's what they go for. That's why even on social media, you see how people are clamoring for likes. It's almost like it has taken over their lives. Oh, I have to, if they don't like my picture, oh no, some people slip into depression. It's the same thing at the workplace. Some people would not want to be behind the scenes doing things that gradually build. They would rather do those things that may not be as important as they should be, but as long as those things are going to bring them immediate recognition, you'll see them focusing themselves on that. The question is, do you really need to focus on those things that are not necessarily important, instead of being behind the scenes and building yourself to the point where that recognition will come regardless? You won't even need to hustle for it. It will just keep on coming. And there's this thing amongst creatives that there's a common belief that says you're only worth what you create. So if you're a creative, if you're a writer, if you're in the arts, you find people, they grapple with depression. If they put out a body of work and it's not fantastic, they may put out a body of work today and it's fantastic, and they put out another body of work the next time, they feel bad, they slip into depression, because they feel that they are defined by the work that they do. And so you find that people that are creatives, they have the vicious cycle of highs and lows. Today, they are really happy. Take a look, example, you see the musicians, they are putting out bodies of work. If the work is accepted, they are happy. And then if the work is not widely accepted, they become sad, But then this is as a result of a lack of clear distinction between your life and your work. You're not necessarily defined by your work. The fact that you put out a body of work that may not have been successful at the last does not mean that you're a failure. But people need to recognize this. Now, the narrative that you have to win everything sets you on a defensive, and then it helps you not learn from failures. So failures are there in life for you to learn from. The fact that you won yesterday and you're losing today, or you're failing today, does not mean that defines you as a person, right? There's nothing wrong in being competitive. However, it's also healthy to fail, right? Maybe people might be looking at me like, what are you talking about? But when it comes, it's not a dent on your image. Like I said, you're not defined as a failure if you fail. It's just an opportunity for you to learn, and move forward. Take your learnings from it and move forward. Now, when your mind, the author says, when your mind is fixated on solely the acquisition of material things, all you're going to work, you're going to work for is money, 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 I know some people ask me, but yeah, why am I working? But the truth is, there has to be some deeper purpose to your life than just going to work for money, or else you become empty. You find that you're empty. And if you do that, if all your the reason why you're going to work is just for money or acquisition of material things, then the important things take a backseat, and that could be dangerous, right? Now, these things I'm talking about, is any of these narratives familiar to you? Is that something you have experienced, or you know someone who has experienced it? Now, these kind of destructive narratives affect the judgment and behavior of people. That's why you see some people, they will do anything to get money, and you're just wondering why. These are the narratives that set the tone for such behaviors. Now, because these are destructive, there are certain strategically chosen narratives that could help you align with what really matters, with you finding the purpose for your life. Now, there was something the author said, about, when we were children, we used to look up to the superheroes. You wanted to be Superman, you wanted to be Batman, and you identified with that good thing that Batman did. Batman was a rich person, but he was there to save the people. Superman had his superpowers, kryptonite, but you wanted to be that person to save him. You identified with the good part, right? So it's saying that even as adults, we need to rekindle that ability to emulate the good qualities of people around us. Who are those people around you that you look up to and you're like, wow, I really like this person, it's a role model, rekindle that ability to take on or emulate the good qualities of those kind of people and implement those good qualities in your life and at work. Now, be careful that when you're emulating, he's not saying, what the author is saying, that don't become a clone. Nobody's saying that you should now, clone and copy yourself after that person, because at the end of the day, we're all uniquely created. We all have our own unique blueprints. So let me give an example. Tony Elumelu, no matter how you dress as much as he does, or like with him, you can't be Tony Elumelu. You are Patrick. You are Ezinne. You're different. So don't, as you're emulating, don't become a clone of the person. Just take on the things that you admire and apply them to suit you. Now, there are a few clues that you can pay attention to if you want to identify these emerging qualities, these things you want to take on. First of all, what intimidates you? So now, you might be having a discussion with somebody. The author gave an example of when, he had a discussion with someone he admired, and the person told him about his achievements, things that he was looking to do, and that really shook him. So intimidate is in such a way, is not a negative thing in this context. It's more like something that makes you want to up your own game, right? There's anything that you're talking with somebody and you hear or you see or you notice about them that makes you want to up your own game, pay attention to that thing, because that's most likely pointing you in the right direction of your work, right? And these areas of resistance at work are the areas you should march confidently towards, because they intimidate you. They feel like they're bigger than you. But those are the things that you should conquer and say, you know what, I can do it. If this person did it, I can do it, and I probably can even do it better. So these are the ones, these things that scare you are the ones that march you forward, clearer to your purpose. Number two, what resonates with you? Sometimes you hear somebody say something, you see someone do something and it hits you, you're excited. Like even when I was reading this book, there were things that I was like, oh, wow, it resonated with me. So those things that resonate with you, those are the things that you're aligned to. Pay attention to those things. They are not random. There's a pattern. If you notice, there'll be a pattern of things that you align with, right? So when you experience these things, the author has said, jot these things down. And in fact, when I was even writing this, during my book review, I was just like, I want at the beginning of this session, I hope we have pens and paper, to take notes, because some of these things, they're things that you want to take down and apply as you move forward. So even your experiences, there are certain things that hit you and you're like, wow, have your notebook somewhere and write. So what I do, I go around my phone, I have a notebook on my phone. I'm sure we have the notes app, some of us note these things down, take note of them, because those are the things, those are the patterns, those things that make you come alive. They're edging you closer to your clarity, giving you further clarity. Another way to explore the traits that you love to emulate is to read the biographies of people you love. I know people that would do that. They look out for biographies of people that they love and read about them and try to model or take on traits that they admire and apply to their lives. Then the third thing is what complicates your life. There are certain things that, when you feel them or when you experience them, you're frustrated, right? But they're saying that, the author is saying that these are things that can give you a deep sense of motivation. Because think about it, some of the solutions you see in life, some of the things you see out there, they've come about from everyday problems. Somebody looked at an everyday problem and was motivated to bring a solution to it. So what is that thing that frustrates you? What is that thing that complicates you? You just might be the solution provider to that thing. Think about it. So these are things to think about. Now, over time, it has been said that we have inbuilt assumptions. We were born with certain, maybe not born, but exposed to certain assumptions from family, from culture, from society. So you need to excavate those assumptions, right? Because if we don't challenge those assumptions, they can serve as a limitation to our potential. So to become more effective, it's important that you need to do a regular review inwards to check for these limiting assumptions. What are the assumptions that you have that are limiting you, that are not making you move forward? Maybe you come from a family that, oh, there's only one level that they get to. It's like a ceiling. Nobody can go past that. You need to challenge the assumption. You need to ask, what if, why not? You need to ask yourself those questions. So how do you uncover these assumptions? The author has said, first of all, set time aside daily for reflection. It doesn't have to be 1 hour thing. You can do this for 10 to 15 minutes. Set time aside and think about, do a review of your life. Check to see what you can change about whatever you did for that day. 2, identify the patterns. 3, create a watch list. Now, take note of anything, of when any of them comes to light in any interactions you have. Because sometimes from discussions or interactions you have with people, you're able to, maybe the person brings it to your notice, that you have certain limitations. Take note of those things and put a watch list together. Then establish defined consequences for those limitations, for those assumptions you have. And it helps you stay aware so that you can address them. Because if you don't define what it is, then how do you address them, right? And then seek feedback. Ask people, because sometimes you might have a blind spot. You don't know that you're doing these things. Or you might think that it's okay. Ask someone else. It's important to engage others in our good journey. You can't do this alone. It takes a community. So ask for feedback. And it's important that as you're asking for this feedback, you're not defensive. Because if you're defensive, you failed, you've lost the battle. You have to be open to criticism. You have to be open to feedback, constructive criticism. And whatever feedback you get, take it in good stride. Peter Bergman, the author of 18 Minutes, said, he gave an additional tip. He said to ensure that you don't slip into a rut daily. He suggests to set an hourly alarm as a prompt for evaluating your work. You can do an hourly thing. If you can do it 2 hourly, whatever it is, you tweak it according to how you, but you need to even check yourself. Because I think in the earlier set of chapters, there was a charge to us that when we start our day, we need to think about what we set out to do for the day. And at the end of the day, we need to review what we've done for the day. So if you're evaluating your work, it's the same thing like when you do performance appraisal. We've talked about not waiting to the end of the year to do your performance appraisal, but doing your appraisals more regularly such that you're able to track your performance so that when you get to that final appraisal, there are no big surprises because you've been tracking it alongside your manager. It's the same thing. You're now doing an appraisal for yourself. And so you can start to do the hourly alarm or whatever it is to prompt you to evaluate your work. Now, when you succeed in eliminating these negative narratives, you can't leave a vacuum. You must, because if you leave a vacuum, some other more destructive or equally destructive narratives can come in. So to fill that vacuum, you need to replace it with something productive. To do this, you will need to define a code of ethics. Now, what is a code of ethics? Is that thing that you stand for, those things that you stand for, because if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. These are the words of Uwa's, I'm also going through Uwa's review that she gave to me. So what are the things that for you define your work? For me, one of the things that defines my work is excellence. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to put my all into it. And that's part of my code of ethics. So what is yours? What are the words that define yours? You need to establish, the author is saying you need to write these things down. You need to define them and define them by how you engage your work. So, I mean, it's a fantastic thing that we're having this right before we enter 2024. So maybe that's something you need to do. If there's anything you take out of this review, establish your code of ethics, right? And how do you do this? Dedicate a few hours reflecting on your life and work and determine how you might want to engage differently. Okay, I might have engaged like this in 2023. What can I do differently to engage better in 2024? And use words to define those things. Write down the words that describe how you want to engage in your work and in your life. And then put these words in a place where you easily refer to. I always say this to people when I'm talking to mentees, when I'm talking to people that I coach, I say, see, there's nothing as fantastic as writing stuff and putting it where you can see. Because you can have everything in your head, you might forget, but you see those things, those stick-ons and everything, when you see them, they come alive, they prompt you. So write these words down and put them somewhere where you can see them. Now, note that your code of ethics is not static. So it's not a static document. It's not something that, oh, I put it and so for the next 5 years. Oh, you can do a review in 6 months and they might have changed, you know, things might have shifted around. So they will evolve over time as your needs change. Make it a point of duty to know yourself, to understand yourself. When you do this, you'll be rightly positioned to make your own unique contribution to the world. Now, for accountability's sake, you might say, oh, this thing seems like it's hard. I don't know if I can be consistent with it. You can share it with a colleague or a trusted friend or someone who understands the things that you do your work, right? And that person can help to be an accountability partner to help keep you on track. Now, you also have to establish that that person has the time to be the accountability partner. Don't just go and, you must be my accountability partner when you know that this person is not going to do it. You have to, have determined that this is someone you can trust to be your accountability partner. And then you can also decide to make it a mutual relationship. So you're accountable to the person and the person is accountable to you. And with that, you're able to track yourselves effectively. So that's that for chapter 7. We move on to chapter 8. And chapter 8 talks about being confidently adaptable. Harry Truman says something. So some of there were lots of quotes in the book, but the quotes I took out are the quotes that stood out to me. He says, you can accomplish anything in life, provided you don't mind who gets the credit. And this is so true. I found myself doing work that I would do work and I didn't really care that my name was not in the credits or whatever. My own is I did the work. But then it's very strange to certain people. Some people are like, no, everybody has to know that I did the work. But sometimes it doesn't work that way. Sometimes you're doing those things behind the scenes because you're building yourself. You're building your portfolio. You're developing yourself. It's your own good. And at a point in time, that I always say there's no way a star can be hidden under a bushel. At some point, that shining light, you won't be able to hide it. In fact, the more you hide it, the more they're looking for you. But some people want to just burst out into the spotlight immediately. No, it doesn't need to happen all the time. That's what Harry is saying, because so much more can be done if you're not really interested in who gets the recognition. You can do things by collaboration. It's not always about you being the star boy or the star girl. And so it talks about people with overinflated egos. It says, a person with an overinflated ego focuses their energy to selfish efforts rather than adding value. So it's all about me. Yeah, everything is centered around me. I don't care whether whatever I'm doing is adding value. I just need to have the spotlight on me. Now, the opposite of this ego is adaptability. And in this is the ability to bend to one's environment whilst maintaining a strong sense of self and purpose. So the fact that you're adaptable does not mean that you're a doormat. You still have a strong sense of yourself. You still know who you are, you're focused, but you're not allowing, it's not about, who takes credit. It's about, how much value are we providing? Now here, when something when something goes wrong, there's sometimes a desire to establish firm rules. At the heart of this is a need for control, but rather than striving for control, we need to strive for influence. And I think that a lot of leaders need to see this or hear this. Yeah, it's not because with control, there's a limit to how much you can accomplish. But you see influence. Influence is more far-reaching because people are now, they're motivated to do it. They're not forced, because under control, there's a lot of eye service. When you're not there, then they tend to go this way. But then when there's influence, whether you're there or not, everything is, there's value being added. So as a leader, whatever it is, wherever in your life, in our work, strive to go for influence rather than control. A few ways desire to feed an ego through control in the workplace can show itself is by playing the victim, right? You have those people that don't want to be held accountable for anything. Oh, what happened? Oh no, it's because of the team that you gave me. Because this team, you're not ever at fault. It's that team you created. Oh, they're the ones that are responsible. Or you're snarky, or you're cynical. You're not. I mean, things don't excite you. You're like, when people talk, you're like, we've heard this before. So what's new? There's no sense of childish excitement, childlike excitement. So that's part of the feeding the ego, right? And then making things too complex, right? There are people that believe that if something is simple, it does not have value. they don't want something that is easy. They feel like for something to provide value, you have to jump through hoops and hoops. So sometimes you find, I'm sure you probably have had it in some interactions you've had. You're presenting a product or a service to someone, and it's so easy, and the person like, no, I can't be. This thing is not value. It's not of any value. I want to be able to sweat. I want to be able to jump hoops, so that I know that yes, I struggled for it, and so it provides me value. But that's not the case all the time. Yeah. And also another thing is judging your work in comparison to others, where you're comparing yourself to others instead of, taking your work by its own merits, right? When esteem is your primary objective, your work will definitely suffer. And then also expecting to be accommodated, where you have all your demands, high level demands, you just expect everybody to just bend over backwards to accommodate you. These are the things that feed an ego and make it overinflated. Now, there mustn't be confusion between confidence and overinflated ego. There's a difference between the two. What the author is saying is that you shouldn't be hesitant to be confident. Nobody's saying you shouldn't be confident, but there's a line between being confident and having an overinflated ego. So you must ensure that your need to be recognized does not replace your doing the work. Yes, you need to be recognized, but then you have to do the work. Because those people with the overinflated ego, all they do is walk around with their shoulders high, but they are not doing anything. And we know, as I'm talking, some of us know who we're talking. You have a picture of somebody at work that does that kind of thing. All they do is showmanship. I have to show that I'm the leader, I'm the one, but they are not doing anything. The people that are doing the work are the workers somewhere doing something. So you can be confident and be doing the work, yeah, but then the person with the overinflated ego tends to be empty pretty much most of the time. Now, I'm going to run through a few mindset differences between confidence and overinflated ego. So you know the difference when you're thinking about that person or those people at work. The person that is confident says, I can get this right. So he says, yeah, I can do this thing. I can make it work. But then the person with the overinflated ego says, I can do no wrong. I make no mistakes. I don't fail. That one, that one is not just confidence. It just has a big ego. So a confident person would act, observe, and redirect. So a confident person might be on the path to getting it right, but if he makes a mistake, he redirects himself and goes back on the right path. However, an overinflated ego makes you lose alertness and growth opportunities because you're like, I can do no wrong. And so you don't ever see the opportunity to learn because you don't believe that you can fail. And it also causes you to take silly risks. Now, the confident person says, I'm valuable. I know my worth. I have a strong sense of worth, right? And I'm not afraid to assess myself and contribute value. So I will not be shushed, right? But I still contribute value. But the person that has an overinflated ego will say, I'm invaluable. And he believes that however I am, people have to take me. Whether I give trouble, I'm a diva, you have to overlook it because you don't have any options. There's a clear difference. Then the confident person, says strategic compromise is essential. It's open to dissenting views as long as they make sense. That it's important. So a confident person. So I'll give an example. I used to have this boss. I used to have one boss that if you ever said anything dissenting in a meeting, you were in trouble. I remember then I was a lead under him, and I didn't agree with something that he said. And trust me, I'm somebody that if I don't agree with, I will speak my mind. You can't shush me. And so I said something, in a meeting, in a team meeting, and he called me to the side afterwards and he said, "Did you know that you're a lead? You're not supposed to oppose me in public." And I was like, okay. So when I heard that, to some extent, it quietened me down. Anytime we would have meetings, I'm not one to be quietened, to be honest, but anytime we had meetings and they asked for views, I'll shrug, I'm like, nothing to say. Because to be honest, I'll be the one to ruffle feathers, so I'd rather not talk. But they will say, you're a lead, so you shouldn't oppose your manager in public. And so that kind of thing stifles thinking, it stifles creativity. Meanwhile, on the other hand, I then had a boss that he would sit all of us down, in a meeting room. And when you see us talking, it's like we're brainstorming. Someone will say, I don't agree, someone will come with his own perspective, this one will say this. He always wanted to hear every one of us round the table. even down to the person that was quiet, she would not say a thing, but the moment she says something, she says some very deep things, you know. So he always wants to hear what we say, and he'll be like, he's taking everything in. And then we're there brainstorming. And from those kind of meetings, you would have all kinds of, we would have great policies or policy reviews coming out from such meetings. I mean, our team was extremely, the rate of effectiveness, you know, was so high compared to under the leadership of this other person. So that's what this person is saying. A confident person is open to diverse views and is willing to compromise as long as the compromise is beneficial to everyone. However, the overinflated ego will rather compromise the success of the project just to get all the credit. Yes, I have. And so this other boss I was talking about, anytime he had team members that had different competencies. So if somebody had done something, right, and the other boss would take the person that had done that particular thing, take him to the management and say, oh, make a presentation to everybody, but not this other boss. This other boss would take everything himself, even when he cannot clearly explain it. He will take everything himself, and then he gets to the presentation and he's stuttering. So because he wants to take all the credit, oh yes, the HR manager, I'm the one that did it by myself, you know. And so you see that there's a problem when you want to take all the credit. You shouldn't be concerned about the credit, you know, all the credit. And I give another example. I worked somewhere else where, you know, if a member of our team did something, you know, contributed such great value, we would make sure to mention that person. You know, that person was mentioned in the management meeting. And I'm not talking about I'm talking about global management meeting. The person will be mentioned and recognized. So you know, my boss would always make it a point of duty to mention and give recognition to that person. I mean, how do you think that person would? Of course, he would be glad, he would be motivated to contribute more. Everybody was almost like people were striving to, you know, put out contributions because they wanted that recognition, and that's how things should be. Now, the confident person says, my track record demonstrates confidence. The confident person is very self-aware, is alert to opportunities for growth, and sees past failures as learning points. I said it earlier. But the overinflated ego will say, he does not take accountability for failure. He says, my track record demonstrates invulnerability. I didn't fail. It's not me that failed. It wasn't my fault. It was because of this. It was because of that. The confident person says to you, I'm not explaining it well. You know, because the person is so self-aware, like, yeah, if you're not getting it, like, oh, I think I'm not explaining this well. So they're willing to work through communication issues without feeling threatened to the main matter being communicated. But the overinflated ego takes offense. And then he will now shift the blame and say, it's you are the one that is not understanding. You don't know how to, I am communicating, but you're just not, you know, you're not getting me. That's when you start hearing you're not getting me. That's an overinflated ego, because it's not taking ownership of the communication issues. It's all on you. You're the one not taking it. You're the dense person. You're the one that's not refusing to understand what I'm saying. What I'm saying is clear enough, but you're just not taking it. So that's, you know, so they, you know, they're all about protection. They are protecting themselves. But the confident person is about progression. We need to move forward. So it's important that you develop a deep confidence in your abilities whilst guarding against an inflated ego, because it's kind of like a thin line. I won't really say a thin line, but you just cross over. Before you know, you cross over to having an inflated ego if you're not careful from confidence. Now, what are the ways to prevent ego inflation? First of all, where you need to think about where you're putting yourself ahead of work, right? It doesn't mean that when credit comes, you should push it away. That's not what the author is saying. He's saying that you should also recognize that you might not get it all the time. So sometimes, yeah, when they're giving kudos, it may not be you, the team lead, that's getting it, someone in the team, or there's someone else. So recognize that the recognition has to go around. You don't necessarily have to get the credit all the time, right? And sometimes you need to give into this over the success of the work. It's not about you, it's about the work. Then second question to ask yourself is, where do I feel slighted over small inconveniences? Yeah, you're diva-ish. If anything doesn't go your way, you're complaining. But you need to cement in the heart of gratitude. You're a manager, you get transportation, you know, from certain places to certain places. Be thankful that you have that. Oh, okay. Oh, they should have provided a Mercedes instead of this Toyota that they provided. Why should they do that? Don't they know that I'm a manager? That is not what you should concentrate on. You should be grateful for the things when they are convenient, right? Because if you're grateful during the times of convenience, when there's inconvenience, it will help you become more grateful, and then you become less of a whiner. Now, the question, there's a checkpoint question, because there's so many things inside this book that help you to, there are exercises for you to think about and do, apply. It says, how can you build in a particular act of generosity that will keep you leveled enough to not be entitled? So what is that thing? What is that one thing that you want to do that will make you not feel entitled? I think there was an example in the book where the person said something about, you know, tipping the drivers that come to pick him up, because he recognizes that, you know, he was once in that level or something like that. And so he does it to keep himself grounded. So what is that thing that you want to do, that generosity that you want to do? It's just like when you're in the office and maybe you have to send your runner for something. What are those little things? Do you say thank you to the person, or do you feel like, oh, I'm a boss, I'm a manager, so why should I say thank you to this person? No, you say thank you to the person, maybe give the person a tip. You know, it keeps this kind of things, they keep you grounded, so you don't feel like you're entitled. No, that thing that is given to you is a privilege. It's not, you're not entitled to this. So what is that one thing you're going to do to keep you in a gratitude mode instead of an entitled mode? Another question to ask yourself is, where am I assuming success? One of the effects of ego inflation is hubris, which means that because you've succeeded before, you just assume that you're going to succeed again. Incidentally, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine today, and he said something about an exam that he wrote, and he wrote a mock exam, right? And he floored his exams, like he got A. And, you know, even the teacher was like, how can you have gotten so much? You know, wow, you're a star performer. And so it got into his head. And when he now took the actual exam, he didn't read for the exam and he got a C. That's how it is. And this thing happened to me in school. I remember in secondary school, I used to be like, you know, I was like in secondary school, I was always the one coming first. I was the one carrying all the prizes. I'll probably get like, I wasn't getting anything less than 5 prizes in different subjects. And it was effortless for me. So at a point, it began to get into my head. Like I remember there was one prize giving day. I think I got up to like 13 gifts. So as I was collecting the gifts, I was throwing them. I would come back, I would throw them to my friends. I was really heady, I admit. So I kind of took that behavior into university, because nobody told me that university is not like secondary school. There's CGPA, you build. So I got into university and I was top of the class without an effort. And these lecturers were like, who is this person? But what I was not told was that you can't, the way you did in secondary school is not the way you do in university. So in my second year, that's when life now threw its curveball at me, because I wasn't really putting too much effort into reading. And then, my grades were just going down until I now, realized and started to pick up. So yeah, the person that has an inflated ego would be like, because I've succeeded before, I'm going to succeed, and then they don't put an effort, they don't really care. And then you now find that, they're going down the drain. So you need to learn to, so with this, you could run the risk of losing steam and not having that drive to explore new opportunities, because you feel like, I've made it, so everything should come to me without an effort. And then you don't have the drive to push. You're not hungry. You're not hungry and thirsting after success because you feel like it's going to drop on your laps. No, that's not the way life works. You need to learn to cultivate a service mindset. If you approach work and even life, in fact, further down the line, I think there's a chapter that talks about relationships. If you approach relationships with the approach of what can I offer instead of what can I get, it unlocks another level of engagement. And we find that a lot of people are in relationships, are doing things, whether it's work, whether it's life, and they're in there with the mindset of what can I get? They're there to just take. But then you need to ask the question, what can I offer? Right? Career expert Jody Glickman says she uses the acronym GIFT, generosity, initiative, forward momentum, transparency, to challenge people to seek ways of adding value to the workplace. So when you get into a new, let's assume now 2024, you're starting a new job. Even if you're not starting a new job, you're getting into work, it's a new year. Going to work with the mindset of what can I offer? And I kid you not, it changes the trajectory for you. I worked somewhere, and when I went in, the first meeting I had with my manager, I walked in, I said, what can I do for you? What can I offer you? He sat back, he looked at me. He was like, And we had a conversation and we established grounds, and I said, I'm here to, I kind of pretty much said, I'm here to serve you, not in the eye service way, but I mean, I'm here to offer, this is what you hired me for. And so I would come to him on a weekly basis and I say, okay, what are your, I mean, yes, we had job description, we had KPIs and all that, but then on a weekly basis, we go over what exactly he needs to be focused on. Maybe not weekly basis, maybe like twice in a month or something. We determine the frequency of what we wanted. But you see, that little thing that I did, it took my work life to a different trajectory. Like it was so great that, yeah, he would always say to me that, look, you're my best hire. I didn't make a mistake hiring you as far as I'm concerned. I'm not saying this to blow my head or whatever. I'm just giving you guys as an example of what I did that worked for me. And so there was never any lack of clarity over what he needed done from me. I gave him what he needed every time. There was never, yes, maybe times we'll need to like have discussions to review what we have done, but there was, because I had already established and told him, this is what I'm here for. I'm here to add value to you. What can I offer you? What can I give you? So maybe that's something you need to take as an approach to work. It's not, instead of you saying, I'm going to work, they have to pay me salary. What is the value you're going to offer your workplace? In the process of offering that value, we might get closer to clarity. You might get closer to your sense of purpose. You might get closer to, whatever it is that you were created to do. You will get closer to unleashing your best work on a daily basis. Now, she said, what's important is that you seek to make other people's jobs easier. And that's what I told my wife. I'm here to make your job easier. And I did. Look, he would say, isn't it, I can go to sleep. And I know that if I call you to do this, I know that in that regard, I can go to sleep and I'm not going to lose sleep because I know that isn't it has it covered. Yeah. So how are you making work easier for the people that you're working with, the people you report to, right? Just remember not to go off the line and end up as a doormat. Very important. I'm not saying be a pay eye service or, be a yes person. You have to have your strong sense of self, of self-worth. But then remember that you're there to add value, right? Create the balance, learn to create the balance. And I kid you not too. I'm not a doormat. I know I have a very strong sense of self. I'm very assertive. So yeah, my boss knew that, there were times he would say, they are like, no, sir, I don't agree. We would engage in, sometimes we would knock the door and engage in, brainstorming sessions where it's pretty much like a duel. Like I'm saying, this thing you're saying, I don't agree. But it will come out with respect for each other because he sees that I'm someone who stands my ground on what I believe in, but then I'm adding value. So you have to establish that balance. Now, another way to guard against ego inflation is encourage and recognize others. If you don't recognize others, because it's not about you. You have to learn that other people too, they're also adding value. They're also capable of adding value. It helps prevent greed and envy from eating away at you. It is not about just you. I always say that there's enough space in the sky for birds to fly. So why would I can't, have you ever heard of birds hitting each other? There's so much space. So come on, the spotlight is big enough for all of us. Yeah. A number of ways to build in a culture of encouragement is, first of all, by writing notes of encouragement. You can decide that, you're seeing someone doing work and you just want to send the person a note. Oh, fantastic, well done, you did a great job. There's something we used to do in a place I worked. We would do, so every meeting we would have a recognition moment and everybody has to, well, if you don't have anything to recognize, it's fine, but you have to recognize someone for something that they did. Yeah, and it was just such a wonderful culture. It wasn't just about the boss recognizing team members. It was peer-to-peer recognition. So someone helped me, we worked together, someone made my work easier, somebody did something to support me, I'd recognize the person, and it will make the person feel so good. You'll see their faces light up when they hear their name. So, recognize that person. Maybe you can even introduce a recognition moment, at work. Make a call of encouragement or appreciation. Someone did something, oh, I appreciate you. Oh, I just wanted to call you and say, oh, fantastic work that you did and all that. Or mark a moment. Like I said, we were doing recognition moments. So we'll say, oh, you know what? This is a moment for you. This is spotlight is on you. Oh, you did a good job. At a point, we even got a kudos board. We just, you write someone's name and say what the person did and give the person kudos. Now, you need to do a regular SWOT and self-SWOT analysis. It helps you maintain a realistic sense of your performance and figure out where to focus on. To do this exercise, dedicate about maybe 30 minutes to asking yourself a few questions. What is your strength? What is your unique value? What are you really good at? For your weakness, what are you not good at? What interventions can you apply to help develop yourself? Opportunities, where do you have the most potential to add value in the near future? How can you position yourself for those opportunities? Threats, where do you have the most changes of failing, and how do you mitigate this? In fact, like I said, this is a fantastic time to do this against 2024. So this is something you can do and exercise so that you can position yourself rightly for the new year, charged and afresh. Now, once you've done this analysis, develop a plan of action. So I think what is the issue with a lot of us is we do all this behind the scenes things. So we've done all the analysis, but we don't take action. And that is just, it's just a futile exercise. So you need to develop an action plan and do it, right? Doing this regularly would help you stay grounded. Now, when you do this analysis, check to see if there's anything that surprises you. So you know that you need to tell yourself the truth. You have to be very truthful to yourself. If possible, you can have one or two people, chipping something. Sometimes I do this. I ask people that are very close to me. So when I say ask people, please don't ask someone who has just known you for a little time. They may have some insights to you, but it needs someone who understands, who has learned you, who has observed you over time. Ask them questions, and you'll find that some of the insights might be very surprising, right? So is there a place where ego may be getting in the way of work? Are there ways that this can be rectified? So, okay, fine. I tried to avoid it, but hey, the author says there is a thin line between confidence and an overinflated ego. So check yourself to see where you might be aiming for control rather than influence. Remember what we said about control and influence? You can, and I said you can also have someone give you their perspective, because sometimes we have blind spots we may not even realize, but that person outside looking at you is like, you actually have an inflated ego. So you must be ready to take that feedback. Yeah. So that's all for chapter 8. We move on to chapter 9. Chapter 9, I love chapter 9 because it says find your voice. Some of us, our voices are not heard. You need to find your voice, right? And how do you do that? Take small calculated risks daily and find your voice. The waiting for permission to engage mindset gets cemented very early on in life. Oh my God. And this is so entrenched in our culture. You are so afraid to talk when you're in the midst of people. Talk now. You're beside someone, the person wants to say something, the person has something on their mind. Like, you're waiting for that permission to engage. And I've seen it happen so many times. And I'm telling the person, talk. What are you afraid of? Talk. I'm a talker. Wherever I am, you must hear my voice. And I remember how someone tried to shush me. I remember I used to be in this management meeting. I was the only person in that management meeting that was not a manager, but by virtue of my role, I needed to be in those meetings. And I remember that. And I think I was also I probably was the second youngest person in that place because there were lots of older people. And well, I don't know, they would say maybe your culture or whatever, I'm not the kind of person that would just like, I will talk, but I know that I will not talk rudely, but I'm an assertive person. So I remember one meeting, someone came and said, your own is too much, you need to, you're a lady, you need to. And I looked at him, I smiled, but I'm not the kind of person to, in fact, if you tell me that kind of thing, it pushes me to do more. You're looking for my trouble, because that would even make me do more. But for some other people, that will hush them and they will not be confident enough to speak out. And so it's something that's entrenched in us, some of us from early on in life. When you work, what do you actually do? What do you actually achieve? What's that one thing that you don't have to wait for permission to crush? Think about it. There's something that you don't necessarily have to wait for permission. That permission is in code to, how much time do you devote to this thing? This kind of work is your voice. So there's something that you're so passionate about. You don't need anybody to give you a push or a prod. It's something that it gets you. That the author is saying that thing is your own voice, right? But because of fear, some people are reluctant to take risks, and so instead remain in their safe zones. You want to hide. You don't want to rock the boat. You don't want that uncertainty. I have a job. My job gives me my salary. Listen, what are you talking about? No, this thing, I know my heart is here, but how will I? You keep on asking yourself those questions. But then this is not your voice. Your voice is there, So some people go through life without wanting to be accountable for their level of progress or not. They just happily audit their work lives. but don't want to be subject to the rigor of self-development. I've been manager for 15 years in this place. Nobody's giving me stress. I'm fine. You know, and that's why you find that, you know, I think from the pandemic, when certain people were let off jobs, I remember during the pandemic, there was a lot of panic. Even in, you know, where I worked, you know, I remember we had to bring in the services of the EAP people to come and teach people how to, you know, things as basic as writing their CVs. I've had experiences with people that they don't know how to write this because they've been so stuck in that bubble, you know, they're like, everything is nice and dandy. And then when that external force comes and hits them from outside, they don't know what to do because they've been so comfortable. They're now thrust into the open world. They don't know what to do because they've not developed themselves. Yeah. So it now becomes an issue. So yeah, you are fine with your work life. Everything is nice and dandy. You don't want to be subjected to that rigor of self-development. No, I'm good. They say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. No, but you have to keep on developing yourself. You have to build and build upon yourself. And one of the ways of the self-development is this reading that we're doing. I said it at the beginning of this session. If you're reading, it's like virtual traveling. You're opening up your mind, exposing yourself to different perspectives of the world from different people. So some people would happily pursue shadow activities that offer them short-term wins instead of long-term effectiveness. The deceiving thing about this route is that it could bring success, but it won't be the same thing. So you're not doing that thing that is your voice, right? You're saying it's not I'm doing the job and I'm succeeding now, I'm succeeding. But it's a short-term win. It's not going to be long-term. The effectiveness of that is not going to be long-term. So yeah, you can live under the illusion that you're doing well. But the question is, are you actually really doing well? Because there'll always be that nagging thing at the back of your head. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. This is where there's an itch. It's an itch, and you need to scratch that itch. Now, the good thing about it is that no matter how far you've drifted off course, you can always come back, redirect. You can set a new brain. So don't say, it's late. I've spent 20 years in this place. This thing is okay, it's done. No, you can come out and start. There are stories of people that did those things when they were at such old ages or whatever. I'm not saying you should wait till then if you have the opportunity now, but I'm saying that wherever you are right now, it's not late to, come out, step back and chart a new course. And I'm talking to myself as well. Now, walking towards your dream is really a linear path. It's a culmination of lifelong process of observation. It's like this, I think I've seen a pictorial example of this thing. Like you think it's a straight line, but hey, there's lots of zigzags here and there. It's a process of observation, course adjustment. Sometimes you make a mistake, you take 2 steps back. It's like the game of snakes and ladder or something like that. You go up, you slide down, you come back up, risk-taking that eventually leads to the recognition of value. Sometimes your vision may not be clear in the beginning. You always hear this thing say, jump, just take the first step. If you may not even have a clue of how to go about it, but you just know that there's this nagging to go. Yeah, but just follow the arrows. Sometimes it's the openness, the possibility of rejection that leads to the discovery of something really valuable. So you have to be open to failure. You say, you know what? If I perish, I perish. But I have to do this thing. I have to find my voice. And so it says, jump off the cliff. Just jump off the cliff. Yes, what's the worst that will happen? You will jump off and you fall into the water and crocodile will eat you. But then what if there's a net waiting to get you? What if, I always say this thing, what if? When someone says, but I now say, but what if? So ask yourself, what if? So you will discover your voice through little clues that become apparent over time. It's like it's a pattern, as long as you follow and apply them. A few ways to start this process include planning for experimentation. So yeah, you might say, I don't have the time, when I'm under pressure, there's no room for experimentation, but you can be intentional about it and then set aside time from your work schedule to carry out these experimentations. Just want to test things, yeah? Then secondly, apply peripheral aptitudes to your problems. What are the skills? Those skills that you think that might be irrelevant. What are those things that could be helpful to you in your current work? So I happened to be in this training some years ago in Joburg, and there was something they called, so there's this book that we read, The Multipliers. That was the basis for that training. And yeah, they were training mid-level managers to move up to become, high-level managers. And there was something they said, they called it native traits. They gave us the paper to write down what we think our native traits are. So those things that you think that they are they don't necessarily apply to work, but they're your traits, the things that you do. So like, oh, you're someone that loves organizing. Meanwhile, your work is not necessarily doesn't necessarily have to do with that, but there are things that you're just very good at. You might think that they are irrelevant. Oh, I love to organize. I love to put things together. You know, those little skills that you think might not be irrelevant. They are, you know, so take note of them and then see how you can apply them to unlock new perspectives. Because I remember when we finished that exercise, we sat around and, you know, people that knew each other, like, this, you know, in fact, they were even learning new things about each other. They were like, wow, oh, this is what you have. Do you know that you can use this skill? You might think it's irrelevant, but you can apply it to work, and this is how it works. And so, you know, that's what the author is saying. You know, those skills that you think that they don't have anything to do with work now. Okay, I like to paint. I have a knack for interior decorating. I like to make sure that everywhere in the house is nice and neat. Think about how, you know, you can take something of that and apply it to what you do. If you make a list of it, you might be able to find something that you can apply to make your work more effective. That's all part of unleashing your best work, because you're making that thing that you would have done in a particular way, you're doing it with the added touch of that skill. Do you get? So that's what the author is saying. And then he also says, open your eyes, pay attention to those little moments of inspiration and follow them where they lead, even if it seems impractical at the moment. So you might be inspired, something might splash in your head. Like my notebook has so many notes. Sometimes I'm just sitting down and a thought comes to my head, and it might be the craziest thought, but I write it down, because I don't. And then sometimes I have notes from years before, and I look at them like, wow. And I look at what I'm doing now, and I'm like, wait, so the dots are connected. But at that time, it seems stupid. So it doesn't. He's saying that it doesn't mean you should be reckless. Now, isn't it said you should note down these ideas? So if you have an idea that you want to be a tap dancer, you say, oh, I want to leave my job because I have an idea to be a tap dancer. He's saying don't be reckless and follow every whim. But he just says you need to just learn how to hone your instincts and build the courage to take small steps in the right direction. So you've identified that idea. It might seem like, but then you're taking little steps to make you get closer to what you're doing. So like what I'm doing now, or things I do now, there were signs years before, but I didn't think anything of it. But I was doing these little things. In fact, I wasn't even consciously doing those things. And then now I'm thinking about it like, it's all adding up. Yeah. So how much more when you're even intentional about it? So this is very likely to give you your best work. So are there any intuitive hunches you're ignoring? The things that come to you and you're like, it's not practicable in this Nigeria economy. No, don't ignore them. Take note of them. Even if you don't act on them immediately, take note of them and then see what little steps you can take towards achieving those things. What do you plan to do about it? What do you plan to do about the intuitive hunches that you have? You may not be able to, the plan may not set into motion right away, but what are the little things you can do to start to charge towards that, that goal? Now, the author also says, do the obvious. Ideas that might seem obvious to you might be so amazing to others. Now, there's some things that you do, right? They're not a big deal to you, but to other people, like, wow, you can do this so seamlessly. Do you get? Okay, I'll give an example. Yemi has, he has these groups and everything. And to him, it's like, yeah, I'm balancing my work, I'm doing everything. And to you, are like, how is he able to do that? So, but if he didn't take his idea and implement it, right? If he took it and said, it's obvious now, I don't need, he didn't implement it, we will not be enjoying the dividends of this. So that thing that you think you have that you think is ordinary, it's amazing to others, right? But you're holding yourself back from sharing because of how simple you perceive it to be. You're like, okay, my idea is to create pens or pencils. I'm like, or there's some skill you have that you're like, and people are like, wow, how do you do this thing? How are you able to do this? Or it's even something as easy as reading a book, like doing this book review. Some people are like, how do you read a book? And I'm like, but it's easier. Like, I don't think it's rocket science. But to others, it's amazing. But you're holding yourself back because they're like, it's too simple. Why would I? But no, you need to unleash. You need to release this because you have a lot to offer the world. It says great work does not need to be complicated. Sometimes deep truth is hidden in plain sight. And that's the thing. We try to complicate life, but sometimes life is just really simple. But for us, it can't add value if it's too simple. It's too easy. How could it have been? No. No, but sometimes that amazing thing might just be very simple. Yeah. So the author says imitation is not wrong. So you can, they say fake it till you make it. I mean, there are different diverse opinions about that. But he's saying that, look, it's not wrong. In fact, it serves as a foundation for building your competence. However, don't stay in it for long. So you're using it as a platform to build your own competence. Then you will need to now come out of that shadow and now form your own persona, right? Take your risks. Don't be hiding behind someone else's shadow. Now put out your voice in your own form of expression. You need to come into your own, be your own self. Now it says walk gradually and you will discover your voice along the way. Know that it's not an overnight effort. It's not an overnight job. You have to do it gradually and eventually your voice will be heard. Ask someone you trust what attitudes they notice that seem unique to you. It goes back to what I said at the beginning. This thing is not a solo journey. You need community to help you, do this, right? So remember, the key word is someone you trust. It has to be someone you trust and someone who understands and knows you, right? Ask them where you add value. If they're open, it can be a mutual thing. As they do for you, you can do for them. So with that, we come to the end of chapter 9. I did say that I was going to go around the table to ask us, those of us that have read the book, what our learnings have been so far. I think we can just give a few minutes to that before we now proceed with chapters 10 to 12. So I'm going to open the floor. And if I don't hear anything from anybody, I'll start calling on people randomly. So if you don't want to be called randomly, please volunteer. We'll unmute you and then just tell us what learning you've gotten from the book so far and maybe what you're going to apply, going forward, going into 2024. We have just one day left before 2024 comes. Anyone? Please raise your hand if you have something to say. I mean, this book is so amazing. You cannot tell me that there are no learnings from this book. Except everybody in this space do not read the book. I mean, and if you do not, please, I beg you, I charge you to read the book. So anybody with any learnings, I randomly call on someone to give us learnings. Okay, first of all, who has read the book? Even if you've read one chapter, can you signify who has read this book? Even if it's just one chapter. Anybody? Hello, am I talking to people? Hello.
Yeah,
I mean, can everybody hear me? Okay, Yemi, you can hear me, right? Okay, can I call on someone? Can I call on Ruth? Can I call on Ruth? Ruth Nzere. Ruth, have you read this book? Hello, Ruth. Are you there? Hello. Hey. I mean, was everybody listening to me or was I talking to myself? Yeah, me, are you here with me?
The end of the year winding down things. Maybe you just continue.
I really wish I can talk. Okay, Joe says, I learned not to be, okay, he says he's where he is. Very okay, so you can send in your voice, you can send in your comments, it's fine. I learned not to, okay, TJ, I'll unmute you, I'm coming. I learned not to be complacent with the attained successes, but rather keep pushing on like there is no big deal. Okay, great, fantastic. TG, I'm coming to you to unmute. I think I've lost you. Okay, yeah, okay, Annie. Yes, because I was beginning to wonder, nobody was responding to me. Has TG left?
It's close now, you can unmute it.
No, I'm still here.
Okay, yeah. Okay, TG, go ahead.
Okay, like you, when you were sending in the summary yesterday, and like I pointed out, the code of ethics, it was something that hits me very well. Maybe with my legal background, there is what we call ethics in law, and ethics is actually the foundation of what gives law the moral backing and the legal backing, right? So, and if you don't abide by those ethics, no matter what you are, no matter your level, you can actually be banned, you can actually be fined, because those ethics are very much very instrumental to what the law represents. So when I saw that you need to develop a code of ethics for your life, it made so much sense to me, because with those code of ethics, and the author was saying you can even share with someone that can keep you accountable, that knows that these are your code of ethics, and if they are your code of ethics, that means that you need to abide by them, and on no account should you be going contrary to your code of ethics. So that was very instrumental for me from the book.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, TD. Yeah, I mean, look, well, I remember when you put that comment there, I was like, yeah, it's so important. But when I saw that code of ethics, I'm like, oh, wow, because if you, like I said, sorry, it was a comment that was said that if you don't stand for something, you fall for anything. So people need to know who you are, what you represent. Because the truth is, people are watching you. You don't, you might think that people are observing you at work, and they know somebody can do a dossier on you and say, this is how this person is. So what are the things you stand for? What are the things you don't stand for? But if you're like wishy-washy, this one. So you need to establish a code of ethics by, and you need to define them. What are those things that you want to be known for, so that you can see them, and then, so you're keeping yourself in check to make sure that you're abiding by them. So thank you, TG. Is there anybody else that wants to comment? This book is such a fantastic book that I would think that people are rushing to say what they've learned. Thank you, Joe, for your contribution. So if you don't want to talk, you can type in your contribution. Okay, I mean, you can go ahead with sending in your contribution, but I'm going to, because of time, because I know this is like a day before crossover, so everybody's like, we need to get ready. So fine, we're going to rush through things, or I'm going to hurry up. I'm going to move on to chapter 10. Chapter 10 says, stay connected. In my previous review, the chapter reviews, I always talked about this is not a solo journey. You cannot do this alone. Who said it? There's a saying, no man is an island. You think, oh, I do work fantastically when I'm alone. Yeah, fantastic. But you know what? You still need other people. You need a community of people to do, to get work done. That's the honest truth. So, and it says we were not built for isolation. If we're built for isolation, then God would have just created one person now. There was no need to have other people. There was no need for procreation. Yeah. But we were not even built for isolation. So we need other people to help bring out the best in us. As it's going that journey, you can't figure it out all by yourself. There will be, I've always been making reference to this. There are blind spots. There are places you can't see. There's only so much you can see, but there are people that can see ahead. There are people that can see by the side. You need that squad. You need them, right? And yeah, I will say, oh, relationships are so challenging. I've had discussions with people. I say, adult relationships can be really so challenging. Gosh, you want to go into a friendship or whatever. You have to deal with the drama of the differences of that person. I'd just rather be alone and stay away from drama. But the truth of the matter is that in life, you need relationships. However, whatever their definition is, you need relationships. And it's so easy for you to curl up in your shell, because relationships are challenging, and say, you know what, I'd rather be on my own. I don't want no drama. But this limits your exposure to new insights about yourself. I get amazed when I sit with people and they're telling me stuff about me, and I'm like, really? I'm opening my eyes. I'm like, wow, I didn't even know. I'm even talking about after how many years I've lived on this earth, there are certain things I don't, they're new to me. I'm like, oh, really? I mean, I do know myself to a considerable level, but there are certain things that might still be new to me. Like, I'm like, oh, wow. And this person is saying it after having observed me for a while. So if you stay in your shell, then you don't get that exposure. Contrary to what people think, great work is accomplished within the context of a community. Not many people are able to stay focused on their paths without an external push. And really, sometimes you need that push, that prod. That's why we talk about accountability partners and all that, because sometimes you want to do something, but the paralysis of inaction holds you back. There's fear, there's, oh, what will people say? But there's someone that tell you, come on, do that thing, you can do it. You just need that push. And it may not necessarily come from within you, it will come from someone else. Avoidance and squashing conflicts are ways in which you ensure that your relationships aren't effective. So when you're, avoiding and then you're staying away from conflict, I don't want trouble, I want to be on my own, then you're just trying to ensure that your relationships are not effective. It's erroneous to believe that conflict is unhealthy. I gave an example earlier of a boss I had. We would all sit down inside I used to love going for our meetings because we knew that no two meetings were ever alike. There must be something. I'm not saying that we were always disagreeing, but there were always differing opinions, and it was so beautiful. There will be conflict, but it was healthy conflict. So, if you feel like, anything that is conflict is unhealthy, that's not true, right? Sometimes lack of conflict might signal that the fact that people don't care anymore to give their views or ruffle any feathers. And I gave an example where I decided that if they ask me anything, I'm like, I have nothing to say. You see, when people get to that point, when you're in a meeting and you're asking for opinions and people are like at work and people are saying, there's something wrong. There's someone that's stifling their voices and they're like, you know what? You're the know-it-all, go ahead. So that's where things are dangerous. You need to allow for diverse opinions, for people to speak their minds, because in that's where creativity is bred. As a leader, restrain the urge to censor conversations and expression of views. You can't hush or shush anybody down. At the beginning of this, review, Yemi mentioned that I'm a Toastmaster. Yemi is a Toastmaster. There's one beautiful thing about Toastmasters. See, you walk into Toastmasters, even if your speech, you give a speech and you stutter through it, nobody's going to laugh you down, nobody's going to hush you. Yes, you will get constructive feedback at the end, but there will be nobody judging you negatively. There's nobody laughing at you. And that's such a beautiful thing. And so I watched people come in and they were just like, they could not make a speech. And then you see them blossoming and they're making speeches on different podiums in different places. And you're like, wow, you see what this kind of environment breeds? So that's what the author is saying. If you censor views, if you censor people from expressing themselves, you're not allowing development at all. So if you're a leader here or you're an aspiring leader, please allow people to speak their minds. And it starts from even childhood, as parents, I think as some of us culture, as people were growing up, when you want something, they say, shh, don't talk. And that, stifles you. You can't, your mind, the way you think is like this because you're not allowed to express your views. And so I think for those of us that are parents, we want to do things differently. So you have your children, when you say something, they'll say no. Your first knee-jerk reaction is like to say, bah. But then I think about like, why are you saying no? And then you now hear why the person is saying no. That's how it should be, even in the workplace. When someone says, but I don't agree, not say, shut up, I'm your manager. That thing that I'm saying is this. Hear the person out, hear why, because there might be something valuable that the person has to give. And if you shush that down, then you have the opportunity, you lose the opportunity of hearing those diverse creative views. Yeah. Allow for dissent and opposing views, as this could lead to exploration of fresh ideas. Be intentional about your relationships. We talked about this earlier. Come into them with the mindset of what can I offer over what can I get out of this. And we find people have complained that is what a lot of relationships are like. People are in it, what are they going to get out of it? But think about what you can offer, and it makes relationships so much better. Find people who will serve as mirrors in your life, seeing beyond your assumptions and blind spots. We've talked about this too. People who can speak the truth without inhibitions to you. So you should have those people in your life that are not afraid to tell you the truth. They will look you in the eye and say, isn't it? When you finish doing all that, you're high and mighty outside. This thing, I'm just telling you, this is how you are. And you should be ready to take it, not being defensive about it, and they should know that, okay, they're comfortable enough to tell you the clear, uninhibited truth. So please have those kind of people in your life, that should be comfortable enough to tell you the truth. To make this more intentional, identify one or few people to play the mirror role in your life. It's even better if you play the role in their own lives as well. Now then, identify specifics you'd like them to look out for. you can have them evaluate your code of ethics. We've talked about code of ethics. So maybe they take a look and say, yeah, okay, help you tweak it a little bit, or say it's fine, you know, what you put out is fine, you know, or ask you questions. Then set up regular times to connect with these people. Be ruthlessly honest. You have to be honest to yourself, and you have to allow those people that you have set aside to be honest to you. Adjust regularly. None of these things are static. They evolve over time. Now, use probing conversations to gain clarity. If you use these probing conversations, they will quash the following 3 creativity assassins. First of all is dissonance. Dissonance is a breakdown between what we say is important and what we actually do. And this, I'm sure, sounds very familiar. Where you have a boss saying, this is important to us, we care about the people. But at work, you're seeing that, no, what they're doing is they don't actually care about the people. So you don't want to be that kind of person, right? And this could greatly affect the morale of the team. You know, if you're that kind of leader, you put out there, you know, do all the nice paparazzi, oh, we care about the people, but in actual fact, you don't care about the people. So having intentional conversations can help resolve this breakdown. I remember we did, somewhere I worked, we would do, what do you call it? Well, different places I work, but I'm just referring to this particular place. We would do engagement surveys, right? And when I came in, they had been doing it and people were cynical about like, people do this thing, you don't ever accomplish anything with it. But we devised a new way. You know, we would unpack it with the teams, right? And we'll sit with the teams and we would walk through it. And you find that people were expressing their displeasure over, you know, certain things that the company would say, oh, we're doing this, but they're actually not doing it. So we started tracking ourselves. We put our objective, we extracted certain things that people had issues with, and we were like, okay, we're going to concentrate on these 2 things, we're going to concentrate on these 3 things, and we're going to track ourselves. We're going to give ourselves percentage completion rates. And so on a quarterly basis, we did a review with the teams, you know, we'll say, where do you think we were faring with this? And we actually put out specific actions to address these things. And we found that it was working because people now saw that, okay, we were not just talking the talk, we were walking the talk, and we're actually taking steps to walk that talk. Yeah. So this is about having the intentional conversations, because when you have those intentional conversations, you help resolve that breakdown, which could result in, you know, it could result to cynicism and all that, on low employee engagement. Another creativity assassin is fear. In this context, it means paralysis of inaction because of the perceived likeliness or consequences of failure. Because you feel like you're going to fail, you're not going to take action. I'd rather stay under my shell than take action, you know, than take action because I feel I'm going to fail. No. Why don't you do it? Because I always ask this question, what if? What if it doesn't happen? What if you don't fail? And if you fail, what's the worst thing that would happen? I also ask this too. In many cases, this fear is a figment of an imagination. Have you ever really thought about that? Sometimes you want to do something and you're so afraid that you're like, and then when you actually do, you're like, it wasn't that bad after all. I remember when I hadn't started driving in Lagos. I used to say, hey God, if I can drive in Lagos, I can achieve anything. And I was like, I was so afraid that, hey God, when you see other people driving on the road, I'm like, how can I do it? And then the moment my driver at the time, you know, put me on the road and I was shaking, I'm like, and eventually, like, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was, not such a big deal. But that's how it is in life. That thing you're so afraid of is an illusion. When you actually face it, it's not as bad as you thought it was. And fear mostly, the author says fear thrives mostly in places where it's not discussed. You're not addressing it. You're not talking about it. So it's there. It's because you're not facing it headlong. It will continue to fester. But when it's discussed, it's likely to not take hold over your life and career. So talk about it. Talk about your fears, and you'll find that they're not half as big as you thought they were. Expectation escalation can come into play when there's silence around expectations. Having conversations and getting clarity around expectations is important for a healthy work life. So you get into work and you don't even know what is expected of you, right? And because you don't know what's expected of you, you're overdoing. You're doing too much. That's what expectation escalation is, because you're moving around in uncertainty. Okay, I don't know what I should do, but okay, let me do it. You need to bring clarity. And I also made reference to an example where I got into work and I told my boss, I asked him, what can I do for you? What are your expectations? In fact, the conversation I had with him was, what are your expectations of me? And so I was very clear. We're both very clear. So it's not that I'm doing something else. Meanwhile, this is not what he wants me to do. I think I'm busy, but it's not what he wants me to do. Yeah. So you have to have those conversations to gain clarity about what your expectation is in the workplace. Because sometimes you have people with JDs. JDs are just big words, but that's not really what the expectations of your manager is of you. So you need to have conversations and gain clarity so that you're not working in expectation escalation. Healthy relationships don't happen by accident. They happen through consistent effort and intentionality. These conversations are more effective when done both on a team and individual level. So when you have these conversations, yes, you can have them as a team, but then you also address people individually, because some people may not want to speak out in the midst of everybody else. They may feel better to speak out one-on-one. And these conversations also need to be formalized. Now, there are certain conversations that need to be had. First of all, clarity conversation. It's important to have a clarity conversation for alignment purposes. Some people shy away from this because they feel like if they ask for clarity, it seems like they are incompetent, but that leads to expectation escalation. So you need to be sure, okay, I'm not really clear about what's expected of me at work. Can you please give me clarity so that you people are on the same page? I guess that also comes into play with KPI setting and all that. But then outside of that, make sure that you're clear on what is expected of you. You cannot accomplish something that you cannot define. As a leader, it's important to have these conversations. Most tension within groups is caused by lack of clarity. If everybody's clear on what they are supposed to do, that confusion or that chaos will be resolved to a bare minimum. And you can resolve this by asking a few questions. How does what I'm doing tie into why our company exists? I'm talking to every one of us. How many of us know what we are doing ties into why the company exists? Have you asked yourself that question? Have you asked the question? Maybe you need to ask that question. Then 2, can you clarify the objectives again? Are you clear about what is expected of you? You need to be clear. If you have KPIs set for you or whatever, you need to be clear. Make sure that you're both on the same page, you and your managers. This is what is expected of me, right? This, so that you're both aligned, so that when the results come out, then there's no chaos. Everybody's on the same page. When you encourage asking of questions, even the seemingly silly ones, it builds a culture of trust. If people feel like they can ask questions, no matter how seemingly silly it is, they feel comfortable to speak up, about anything. And clarity is critical to building a healthy team. Here are a few questions to ask to help clarify expectations within an organization. As a leader, you ask, do you know what is expected of you? What do you expect of me as a leader? And am I falling short? Both of you can ask each other that question. It's far better to know where you're falling short and deal with it before it festers. And I referred to the appraisal, where some people decide that it's only at the end of the year they do appraisal. And then when you now get to the end of the year, you have a big surprise. I thought I was doing well. And because there was no clarification, there was no clarity, there was no communication. And that's what brings this kind of issues. So when you get this feedback, right, you've asked, am I falling short? And you get the feedback, don't get defensive. Even though they might be uncomfortable, don't be afraid to engage in expectation conversations. Those are great conversations to have. An issue uncovered is typically less damaging than a covered one. Now, the next conversation is the fear conversation. Remember when we talked about fear thriving where it's not discussed? This involves shining the light, addressing that fear, and neutralizing it where it's hidden. And these are the questions you need to ask. What are you afraid might happen and why? This is typically a question to ask. Sometimes when you're beginning a project, you're starting a new idea, broaching a new idea, the team members are apprehensive. These are questions to ask them. And once you come to terms with the risks and the consequences of fear, then it limits how fear can inhibit your creative process, because you've addressed it. You've looked at, okay, if this happened or this failed, what are the consequences? You've already dealt with, you already know how to handle it. So it's not such a big deal after all. Then you're now able to just jump feet in, But if you don't address it, you keep on being held down by it. Then the second question to ask is, what was the last risk you took? Talking about risk is a great way to normalize it. Ask others about the risks they have taken at work and in their personal lives, and then share yours. When you put yourself out as vulnerable, people can relate, and then, they're able to overcome their fears better. The next conversation is the engagement conversation. This conversation will help you identify patterns of energy and enthusiasm and tap into the deep inspiration around you. So the first question to ask is, what's inspiring you? Second question is, how do you feel about the work we're doing? Thoughts and feelings are often very different. A decision might be rational, but we might be emotionally unattached to it. And it's, when I read that, I was like, yeah, true. I may not be emotionally attached to something, but it sounds like a good idea, right? But if I'm not emotionally attached to it, how do I unleash my best work? So don't sacrifice emotional engagement on the altar of rational engagement. The third question is, what's the best thing we're doing, and why is this the best thing? Why are we doing it? Why is it our best thing? It's a good way to check team alignment and discover team perceptions of the work. Then the final conversation is the final 10 conversation. Now, this is was very funny when I read it. Said the conversation is about getting the final remnant of feedback that others might not give if you don't ask for it. Yeah, they've given, but they are holding this one back and they're like, you have to ask for it and probe it out. And then, so these are the questions to ask. What's something I'm doing that doesn't make sense? This creates an environment of trust to say difficult truths to each other. If people realize they can say things in the open, it removes the occurrence of careless whispers behind closed doors. I remember I had a boss that encouraged, actually more than one boss that encouraged this kind of thing. He would just bear himself, say, yes, I know I may not be a fantastic boss all the time. So what's the thing that I'm doing that does not make sense? People were wary at first to talk, but they started opening up, saying things. And so there was no longer the need to have those behind the scenes talk, or maybe that reduced it because, you knew that if you had an issue with him or you felt that something he was doing, you could tell him to his face and he would take it. He would take it in stride. He wasn't defensive about it. He didn't take offense to it. So maybe those are things you need to, incorporate. Number 2 question is, what's the smartest thing I'm doing now? This question focuses on positives. It isn't a question fishing for compliments, but one seeking revalidation of your chosen priority. So you need to be careful who you ask that question. Because if you ask someone who doesn't understand you, it may come across as self-serving. So you need to be careful who you ask this question. The third question is, what's something obvious that you don't think I'm seeing? The better you get at these conversations, the more clarity, alignment, and energy you will find in the workplace. This will in turn get you to unleash your best work. Be intentional about your relationships. And this is a checkpoint question, something you need to ponder on. Who are you going to connect with? Well, not today. Today's over. I'm just saying, if you're in the workplace or if you were starting a new day, who will you connect with today to touch base and share your work? Make it a regular habit to engage in these 5 conversations with others. And that brings us to the end of chapter 10. Now moving to chapter 11. Remember, we said chapter 11 and 12 will give us strategies on how to unleash and live our best lives daily so that we die empty. So chapter 11 says, live empty. And it's a quote by James Oppenheim that resonates with me. It says, the foolish man seeks happiness in the distance. The wise grows it under his feet. Let me bring it back down to home. Waiting day for Sokoto, day for Shokoto. That's how we say it, right? Shokoto is your pants, your trousers. That's exactly what James Oppenheim is saying. And I remember watching an excerpt from a podcast, and someone was saying that we keep searching for happiness. It's like it's a journey. You feel like when I do my house, or when I move into my new house, I'm going to be happy. When I make $5 million, I'm going to be happy. But you forget that the happiness you seek, it's here. You have to grab it on the journey. You have to take it along with you on the journey. You don't wait till you get to the end. You have to build it or cultivate it while on that journey. And I think that's what this chapter is saying. It's saying navigating towards your goals takes intentional effort and constant redirection. Without regular checkpoints, it's easy to drift off course. So of course, as you're taking this journey, there has to be intentionality. You're driving, you may drift off here and there, but sometimes you redirect yourself. And then there have to be checkpoints along the way to make sure that you're on course. Now, this chapter focuses on some of the checkpoint questions at the end of the previous chapter. So some of the chapters had checkpoint questions. Those are questions to just get you stop to think and ponder and say, am I doing things right? Am I on the right track? Or, help you to apply, to take action on these things that you're reading. So one of the checkpoint questions is why daily? Why do I have to do this thing daily? Can't I do weekly? I don't have the time. Oh, gosh. By saying this daily thing does not replace your weekly reviews. You may have weekly reviews or more, different frequency of reviews. However, this is just taking care of minor adjustments, which are best done on a daily basis. You can't wait for like a week to do this. You can just take those little steps, these little things, and they can be done on a daily basis. And it doesn't take too much time. You can take 10 minutes out, 15 minutes out to do these things. The goal of the daily checkpoints is to refocus on your effectiveness rather than your efficiency. It's very easy to confuse progress with effectiveness. That you are doing work does not mean that you are making progress. You might be busy doing nothing. That's why it's important to have mechanisms in place to determine whether your efforts are helping you progress with your goals or just giving you movement. You're just moving. Some people can just be moving for 15 years. They've not moved from anywhere. I'm working, but they've not made any considerable progress in their lives. Let that not be you. Now, empty is a 5-step process that will help you review your life for potential action points and position yourself to do work that you'll be proud of. This process can be used in work and life context. So we're going to take it from E. So E says focus on your ethics. We're back to that ethics again, code of ethics. Remember your code of ethics from chapter 7. These define how you put yourself out in your work, in your relationships, and daily interactions. Write out your code of ethics and look over everything that requires your time and focus daily. Consider how you apply any of your ethics to these. Consider any of the things that will pose as a challenge to your ability to live out any of these ethics. Determine in advance how you would deal with them. Moving on to M, focus on your mission. What is your mission? Do you even know what your mission is? Now, referencing chapter 4, it says, much of your effectiveness is defining the battles you need to fight and focusing your resources on them. As you review your daily commitments, ask yourself, what change will exist today as a result of my efforts? 2, what isn't already represented? 3, what needs to go away? Then P, focus on people. Remember, we've talked about this. Life is about relationships. Referencing chapter 10 that we just left, it says your relationships are critical and are the biggest opportunities for you to add and receive value in your life and work. I was talking with someone recently and we're talking about career progression, and he's at the point where he's done well, he's done really well, fantastic for himself and everything. But then for him to move to the next point, it requires, that you get to a point in your life. Well, actually, every point of our lives, we need networking. So you need to now leverage your networks. It's not even about your competence anymore, because you've gotten to the zenith of your competence, but it's now about networking, because you're just a step away from, you're just a person away from something, if you know the right person and all that, whether we avoid it or not, but if you know the right person, you can be set up in certain places, and you can't get to those places if you don't know the right person, or that right person is not talking about you behind closed doors. So these relationships are the biggest opportunities for you to add and receive value in your life and work. Now, so you need to review your relationships and ask yourself, who am I going to interact with today? Are there any open relational loops to close? Are there any underlying issues that I need to sort out with the relationships I have? Are there any assumptions that we have made that we have not talked about, clarified? Anything that is unresolved, you need to resolve. If there's a relationship that you don't need to have, that is not of value, you're not giving value, the person not giving you value, then maybe you need to review your relationships and determine which ones you need to keep in your life. Then the last question is, how can you serve others today? Now, moving on to T, focus on tasks. Consider your daily priorities. Define your projects. Don't get carried along by your work. Define it. When we talked about you're just doing activities. Don't just be doing activities for the sake of what are the priorities, what are the things that are important. Those are the things you need to concentrate on and focus on. Then why? Focus on you. In the midst of so much to do, it's easy to lose track of yourself, and it's so true. What will you do today to develop yourself? What do you need to start moving on? Get started. Today is the day. In fact, I'm not, some people say, let me wait till 2024. No, today is the day. If you need to do it today, if you need to do it tomorrow, do it. But just do it, like Nike says. Be grateful. The author said dream a little, but I put that a little in bracket because me, I'm not for dreaming little. No. I like to dream. I'm one for dreaming audaciously, but hey, as you want or as it suits you. But yeah, I said, contrary to I'm of the opinion that you should not dream a little bit audaciously. If something comes to your mind as you're reading this, then pay attention to it. When I talked about dreaming, if there's something that did come to your mind, pay attention to it, note it down, because that could just be pointing you in the direction of your clarity, of your purpose. Now, value the process. It's safe conversation starter. Sometimes, when you start conversations, you ask people, what do you do? I think somebody said, instead of saying, what do you do? They say, what do you like? What do you like to do? That is a better thing. I've heard people say that anyway. But yeah, and you see that when you ask that question, people typically answer based on their jobs, not actually on the work that they do. When you say, because your job, yes, but there are other things that you do that define work that you do. But people are just, I'm an accountant, I'm a doctor. Your vocation often transcends your occupation. And what is your vocation? Your vocation is your calling. It's different. It's higher than what your occupation is. Yes, you could be an accountant, but what is your calling? And it's possible that your calling could be an accountant too. So there's nothing wrong in that, but we're just saying that sometimes your vocation is different from your occupation. We need to fall in love with the process, not just the end product of our work. I talked about this, about happiness. You're looking at the end goal or the light at the end of the tunnel, but are you enjoying the process? Are you finding joy in the process? Are you getting happiness in the process? Value that process. The process is within your control, so nurture it. The best way to nurture and fall in love with this process is by applying these daily checkpoints to keep you intentionally doing things that really matter. And then we go on to the last chapter. And the last chapter says, the last chapter is just a foreword, right? It's just, a charge to us. And I will say a quote again that stands out to me by James Baldwin. I think it was from a movie. It says, people pay for what they do and still more for what they have allowed themselves to become. And they pay for it very simply by the lives they lead. Truth is, you can't follow someone else's map. You cannot live another person's life. I always ask this question. Me, when I'm talking with people, someone will say, but Henry did this. I now ask them, but what's your own name? Is your name Henry? They say no. I say, oh, Henry is like this. Or Amaka is like that. I said, what's her name? Her name is Amaka. What's your own name? Ngozi. Are they the same? So you can't live another person's life. You have to intentionally forge your own path. You get frustrated because the reason why you're frustrated is because you are living someone else's life. You are taking someone else's path. That's just true. And because you're trying to fit a square hole into a round peg, you will be frustrated. It can't work. But the moment you find your voice, the moment you gain clarity, the moment you follow the dots, you connect the dots and you start to live your own life, you find purpose. That's why you find people, somebody has been in a job, a cush job for 12 years, 15 years, 30 years. It's miserable. And you're like, with all this money you're earning here. And then the person will now say, you know what? I think my calling is to just go and to go and live in one village somewhere and the person is happy because the person has found their voice. Yes, your own might not be to go and live in one village. It may just be doing something, and that thing you do is giving you so much joy. And it's a far cry from what you had, the kind of life you had been living before. So you need to find your own voice so you can forge your own path. But the thing is, we prefer the easy way, a guaranteed course of success without risk and uncertainty. Isn't it? At the end of the month, 26th of the month, my salary will come. This one you're telling me now. When I go now, I forge out now. I don't know when I'm going to get my income. Yeah, and it was never ever created to be simple. It can't be simple. We said it that growth is not a linear path. It's zigzag, it's up and down. But it doesn't work out like that, like I said. The truth is that there is no lasting success without a probability of failure. Even the most talented people get stuck at some point. There's nobody that everything is just so nice and seamless. No. You can have all the talent, resources, and intentions, but if you have the drive, if you don't have the drive, you won't get anywhere. You're in a car, you're driving, you have the gas, you have everything. But if you don't have that drive to move the car, you ain't going nowhere, right? So intentions and theory don't change the world. Decisive actions do. I've talked about this. You need to take action. I was reading somewhere, like before we started this review, say hope is not a strategy. You can be sitting now hoping for 20 years. That your hope is not going to move you from any point to any point. It's decisive actions that move you from point to point. So you can have all the intentions in the world. Oh, I plan to, what have you done about it? So this final chapter serves as a gut check. like a push in your tummy or something, or pusher, to evaluate where you are in your work. Where are you right now? Where do you want to be? And how would you get there? And this is a conversation I have with people when I'm coaching people and mentoring people. I ask them that question. It's a very simple question, and it's so profound because it gets them thinking. They're like, okay. And that forms the framework of the conversation, of the journey. Viktor Frankl, who is a prominent Jewish lecturer, or who was, and psychotherapist in 1942, came to the conclusion from his experience in multiple concentration camps that purpose and meaning are not discovered through excessive contemplation, but through action. So the thing is that there's so many of us that are thinking through, they are thinking too much. Sometimes you need to do, you'll be doing all your analysis, there's nothing wrong in putting together business plans or whatever. But when you're doing it too much, you're like doing it over and over again. There's this inaction paralysis. You're scared, you're like, but then you're planning, but you're not taking any action. You have done nothing. That's what Victor is saying. That purpose and meaning, you will never find your purpose, you never find your meaning because you've not taken any action. So he's saying, rather than asking, what does life expect from me? What do I expect from life? Ask, what does life expect from me? And probably will see things in a different way. So he says, stop trying to be great. Just be great. Stop trying, be it. Don't worry about being great in the eyes of others. It's not about what others think. Focus on excelling in your work. And I think I said this. I said, working behind the scenes, you're building competence. You see that star that is shining. At a point, you won't even be able to hide it. It will be shining too bright. Like even if you try to cover it, it will just be shining. So that's what it's saying. Say, just focus on excelling on your own work. Forget about what others think, what other people are saying. Just keep on at excelling in your work. He also said, don't give in to the lag. So the lag is the time between sowing and reaping. You know that time between sowing and reaping where you are waiting and it seems like nothing is happening. I've sowed, I'm not getting any results. But that's the thing, there's always a delay between sowing and reaping, right? And at this point, what keeps you moving is the confidence in your vision, your confidence about what your goals are. And then saying no to distractions. So there will be distractions. Something will come and tell you, you know what, you waited too long, why don't you do this? And then the moment you veer off, you lose that. And you may still come back, but it may take you longer. And then daily consistent progress. So, and it says, though there are times that it does make sense to quit rather than continue, be careful to ensure that you're not quitting because of fear or discomfort. Oh, I've been on this journey. I came out of certainty and I entered into this place and oh God, I'm not experiencing the conveniences that I used to have before and I can't take it anymore and I'm quitting. Says don't do that. That's not why you should quit, right? Just remember that there's a delay between sowing and reaping. There's a time for everything. Now the difference, he talks about optimism and wishful thinking. He said the difference between optimism and wishful thinking is that optimism is done while actively working to bring about that thing you're thinking, you're positive about to come to pass. So you're working, but you know that you believe that thing you're doing is going to give you positive result. But wishful thinking is you're sitting down, crossing your leg and say, it is well, it's going to be good. You're trying to, it's just a hope that sits idle. You're just hoping and hoping, and you sit down and hope. The hope will continue, but it's not going to get you anywhere. And he says, start to live a life of selfish generosity where you seek to engage. This is another secret, where you seek to engage, offer your services to the world. You're offering yourself, you're offering value, but of course, at the same time, you're benefiting. When sometimes I like when I'm feeling sad, right? I'm feeling low. That's one of the times I seek to make other people happy. I just, try to talk to other people and find out how you're doing, have them vent and talk to me to make them feel better. So while I'm doing that, I'm listening to them, I'm helping them feel better. I'm feeling better myself. So that's just an example. You're offering yourself, you're offering value, but at the same time, it's helping you. So it says, engage in a life of selfish generosity. Now, this story intrigued me, Sarah Blakely. There have been things about Sarah that have intrigued me, but this one particularly, Sarah is the founder of Spanx. She talked about the regular discussions she used to have with her father, and that's what built her perception of failure. She said, her father would ask her, so what failure did you have today? And she would say, none. And the father would say, oh, that's too bad. And she used to just wonder. And she said it now built her, it made her change her perspective on failure to one of not trying to one of not trying, not the outcome. So she began to see failure that, okay, if she did not try, then she has failed. Instead of, oh, I tried, even though I tried, I failed. That's not a bad thing. But the bad thing for failure is that I actually did not try. And I thought that was so profound. So he brought her up that you have to try at least. And the thing is, what's the worst that will happen? You will fail now. If you fail, you die. I ask my children these questions. I say, come, if you fail, you die. Say no. Okay, if you ask for this, what's the worst that will happen? Somebody will say no, right? Does no kill. No, mommy, no does not kill. You move on and then on to the next one. So that's how it is with failure too. You do something, you test it, it doesn't work. I failed. Okay, we move, right? We move. It doesn't. I don't know that failure has killed anyone. I mean, basically. So, what is your own definition of failure? How do you define failure? Because that defines how you go through life, right? Because this definition you have affects you more than you realize. If you see failure as the end of the world, or you see failure as, oh, I failed and that makes me a failure, that colors the way you see life, and that's how it's going to affect everything you do, your behavior, your interactions. So some of these consequences, we talked about, some of these consequences are actually illusions. They're not as big as you think. They're not as crazy as you think. You can get through these things, but it's your mind. What paralyzes our creativity is our definition of success and failure. That's the truth. So I asked you this question as a checkpoint question. What did you fail at this week? And how did you know that you failed? So maybe that's a question you need to ask yourself and think about it. It says, be a problem identifier and pour your all into providing the solution. So be the one to say, okay, I have identified this problem. I'm not just identifying the problem, I'm pushing it to someone else. Find out how to be the solution provider. Your future is defined by those who choose to contribute more value than they consume. And that's the truth. We are seeing it play out in the world around us. And he also went on further to say, stay off the merry-go-round. Stop organizing pity parties for yourself and not actively doing something to change. Okay, yeah, at work, I don't like this job. I don't like this work that I do. I'm frustrated. What are you doing about it? The same complaint you complained in 2021, the same one you're complaining in 2022, the same one. So it amazes me when I talk to some people and they're still in the same place, but they've been complaining. I'm like, okay, so what have you done about it? Have you applied to a job? If I apply, they will say, oh, yeah, is this job thing is who knows, man. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You have to know somebody. Okay, so you are miserable, but you don't want to do anything about it. So how are you going to affect that change? How is your life going to change? So that's what he's saying. Don't sit around and wait for change to happen. Do something about it. And I always say, what's the worst that will happen? It doesn't work out, Abby. You move on. You move to the next thing until you get results. So when you know what to do, but lack the conviction to do it, it becomes as dangerous because it gets difficult over time. So you've been in this office, they are not paying salary, you can't move because you feel like if you apply, all this job that they put out, it's only people that they know. Those are the people that they hire. They don't, okay, you're not doing anything about it. Before you know it, you've done 15 years, 20 years in that place, and it's dangerous because it gets difficult over time. You now cannot, you now have that inaction paralysis, and at a point you just settle. And that's the most dangerous thing because you then lose your sense of self through inaction. So he's saying, don't defer your action, do it now. And may I add, what's the worst that will happen? Stay out of that gray zone where you're doing enough to get by, but nothing better. I'm earning my salary. I get my salary 26th of the month. That's okay for me. But you're not doing anything to better yourself. Don't settle. Respect yourself and your work to invest yourself in worthy causes. As Rich Seal said, and I love this phrase so much because it sounds like me. I like it. Like, never commit to anything you can't give your all to. If I'm not going to give my all to something, I will not commit to it. I'm sorry. I'll say, I can't do it. If you're going to decide to do something, make sure that you're ready to commit your all. That's part of you unleashing and releasing your best work on a daily. And he says there was a story about someone who he was almost dead. In fact, he practically had died. I think he had to have a surgery and all that. And it wasn't until he was in that near-death experience, he now had an epiphany and now decided to do things, explore things that he would not have ordinarily explored. He started trying out things that he was afraid of, that people would laugh at him. And we're saying, don't wait until are you waiting until when you were almost dead before you now, start to take those daily risks? Don't wait until that point. Start taking those daily risks that are likely to change the trajectory of your life. Make your contributions, no matter how unremarkable they may seem. Be working at the back, be working behind the scenes. You're doing things. I remember when I used to do work, I'll be doing work, I'll be working like a human. I was just working shy. You know, people say, is this your father's company? I was working. But I didn't know that I was planting seeds. I was working because me, when I want to do something, I put my all into it because I believe that is my signature. I don't want to be associated with something that is mediocre. So make your contributions, right? And ultimately, your life will be measured by what you gave, not what you received. And it just makes me remember, for those of us that are Christians, the story of the talents. You're not going to be asked questions. You're going to be asked questions based on what you have talents. What did you do with those things? When I saw this sentence, that's exactly what came to my mind. So it says, don't hold out on the rest of us. We are here, we're waiting. We need to experience you. We need to have you unleash the best of you. And you're holding back. It's a crime or it's a sin. So he's saying, don't hold out on the rest of us. Live each day to the fullest. Like when you have finished the day, you're like, I have emptied myself. And in the end, you will die empty with no regrets and full of satisfaction for a life well lived. And that brings us to the end of the review for this book, fantastic book. And I think that is very timely because we're walking into 2024. I really want us to start 2024 and then end 2024 and say that, I have really unleashed and, I have released all I need to release, for this part of my life. And that's it. So, I don't know if anybody has any more comments. I saw some comments. Thank you, TG, for your amazing comments. Someone asked for the recorded video. Yes, this video is recorded and it will be available on YouTube. I know Yemi can confirm that. But yeah, I don't know if anybody else has any comments, but yeah. Thank you, guys. And we look forward to next year, a new year of book reviews. And please, I look forward to everybody reading and participating in these reviews, not only my face or my voice. I also want to, share this platform with other people. But reading is such an amazing thing, and I just implore us to read. And this book, if you haven't read it, please go and read it. And if you've read it, it's a book to go back and read, reread, and reread. Thank you, Yemi. Okay, Gbemisola says she has a question. Thank you, Ajoke. Thank you. Gbemisola has a question. Gbemisola, please go ahead with your question. Hopefully I can answer. We need to unmute her. I think we do.
Yes, she can unmute herself now.
Okay, Gbemisola, can.
Hi, good evening.
Hello, Gbemisola.
I'm fine, thank you. Let me start off saying thank you very much for your for this wonderful speech and the review so far. I have some things I jotted down, which I'm definitely going to implement in my 2024. My name is Bemi Oladele. I work as Human Resources Business Partner. I have few challenges at work and it's really affecting me. Like, yes, I'm taking all necessary steps to move ahead of this challenge, but I just feel like maybe I should hear myself, and I can have other people, you yourself, give me advice on how to go about it. So, in my work, I happen to focus more on talent management and administrative duties, as well as payroll and some other assigned duties by the head of the department. But I have issues with where people constantly saying, comparing me to maybe their friends and their friends outside the work, which they are not part of our process. And I literally don't even know how to go about it in 2024 because it's affecting me negatively. Where you do this and then they'll tell you, oh no, this is like just letting you know that your contribution is not enough. And this is a set of people doing this, that they grow on the business, they grow in the company. And when they see other people trying to, because now what I'm just thinking in my head is, I guess when they see other people trying to grow the way they grow, they tend to when you said something about where you previously worked, one of your manager, when you want to say something, when you were a team lead, was trying to I know you're a team lead. You don't say, things like this happens to me all the time. And I want to talk. not because I just want to talk, but I just feel like there's an error in this thing you guys are saying we should do, but these are ways we could do better. But when you say it and they just hush you, it's just too much. I don't know how to navigate this in 2024. I've jotted a lot of things down, develop your action plan, understand your core value, but still, I just want to have this, we can't have a smooth journey, but at least to have a seamless work environment. As an HR, so many is expected of you. You have to be the people's person, as well as you have to be the company's person as well. So I don't know if there is anything you can give on how to just navigate this.
Okay, thank you, Kwemisola. So this first comment about people comparing you with people outside, these people are your peers. They are not your managers, are they?
Okay, let's say they are managers. They are managers. I am not a manager yet, but I'm a senior executive. But they
Okay,
are
so no, go ahead.
So they are managers, and I just feel like they are trying to project other people's opinion outside, not part of our process, onto what we will do.
Are these people that you report to directly?
No.
Okay, fine. But I mean, sometimes, when you're having reviews, some of these people's input is also important too. So I think that first of all, what you need to establish is your own manager, the person you report to directly. What are his expectations of you? And are you meeting those expectations? So maybe you might want to start your new year. I don't know when you people set your KPIs, have your KPI setting session. That's a conversation you can have during that time, right? Or, during your appraisal. If you have, some people have appraisals at the beginning of the year, some people have appraisals at the end of the year. If you've already had your appraisal, during your KPI session, you need to find out, so you're aligned on what his expectations are of you. And I think that's what matters the most, because it's what is expected of you, you need to go by. People will say things and all that, yeah, but what needs to be clear is, what does the company expect of you? And that comes from your manager. Are you doing what is expected of you? And I I know that this thing is easier said than done, but sometimes in appraisals or in these kind of sessions, as you're giving feedback, as they're giving you feedback, you should be able to give feedback to your leader. But I'm saying this with corner eye because someone that is already hushing you, I don't know how the person will take, because you can also broach that topic, in that kind of conversation and say, you want to know, that you feel a certain way that you're not allowed to express yourself. Have that conversation and clear it out, because then again, they might, I don't know, it might be a blind spot. He or she might not be privy to it. And sometimes these things are resolved through conversations. But like I said, what is most important is alignment. What is your manager's expectation of you? What is the company's expectation of you? And that is what you need to establish first, and establish that you're meeting those expectations. People will say things, they'll be side talk, but then if the expectations that are, or the expectations of you are met and you align with them and you're meeting them, you're meeting your KPIs, I really don't think that there should be too much of a problem if you're going that path. The people can say things, they will say things, but what matters is what results you're producing. What are the results how is your performance being evaluated? Are you actually performing according to expectations? Then you'll probably be able to conquer some of these things we've talked about. So, I mean, have I answered your question rightly? And is that something you've already done? Have you had the KPI? I mean, typically, KPI setting sessions are done at the beginning of the year. So if that's something you have not already done, this is the best time to bring up such conversations.
Thank you so much. You just spoke like my manager. Same thing she said, that just don't let all those negative things get to you. You do your deliverables, but people will definitely have opinion about, certain things. Just let them do their thing and you do your own. And for the KPI, yes, expectations were met and we're setting next year own by God's grace and everything. Thank you. That's it. I finally get what I needed to do. I guess I just need to just figure it out one way or the other.
You will. I hope you will. Like she said, people will talk. I gave you an example of somebody, I had I have had different times in my career where people will say things about me, but you can say things, but what does my performance say? My performance speaks, and then hey, you can say all you need to say, but I mean, am I giving you results? It's the results that will now, people will say things, they may try to influence certain decisions, but your performance will always speak for you. But the problem is where your performance is also not, up to par. Then there will now be more ground for whatever they are saying to take effect. That's what I believe.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Women. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you so much. We need to call it a wrap so that you can rest and so that we too can rest and the book club can rest. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of us on the book club, we've already shared the book for January. We gave like 3 days head start so that you can catch up. Part of your New Year resolutions should be to improve and enhance your reading capabilities and much more importantly, your execution capabilities. Don't just learn, implement what you learned. 2 things I will just say quickly as I wrap up. One, she said that, and by she, I mean Zene, she said, if there is no conflict, it may mean that people don't care. That struck a chord in my heart. The way she put it, like, so when people even talk about you, even if they are not saying nice things, it's because they care. If they don't care, they will completely ignore you. And it aligns with what Mother Teresa of blessed memory said, that the opposite of love is not hatred. The opposite of love is indifference. I'll say that one more time. The opposite of love is not hatred. The opposite of love is indifference. Thank you so much for that insight. The final point I would just like to make that really, really struck an extra chord. Let me borrow your English. That extra resonated with me tonight. That quote, I'm paraphrasing it now from Victor. I think he got it or wrote it around maybe the Jews who were in concentration camp. That said that you don't actually get your mission just because you are thinking, meditating, reflecting. And that is not to say we shouldn't think of meditate or reflect, but in the place of action, in the place of taking steps, you will find your mission. Ladies and gentlemen, let me add Jara extra. Again, recapping and paraphrasing one point she made towards the twilight of our conversation tonight, when she said that a lady said her father used to ask her, what mistakes have you made this week? Hopefully, we have made enough mistakes in 2023 to make progress in 2024. Again, I would like to sincerely thank Ezine Obiora, my professional colleague, my friend, my sister. Thank you so much for your leadership, your sacrifice, and your support. And by extension, everybody who has collaborated with us, with Ezine, with me on this journey this year. And by collaboration, multiple things. One, you read the book. That's part of the collaboration. 2, you implemented some of the things you read in the book. That's part of the collaboration. 3, you went ahead to drop your thoughts and comments in the WhatsApp group. Thank you so much. Some even asked questions. Thank you so much. Some came to the public domain like this and shared the spotlight with our very own zeal. And some added their contributions, their voice, asked questions, and so on and so forth. Please, in 2024, let's be more active. Ladies and gentlemen, die empty. Good night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.